So this happened to me not too long ago, and this is probably going to concern you. People try to sell me this, the Steelcase Leap version 1, in large quantities at the same price as the Leap version 2. There's a striking discrepancy between the prices of the Leap version 1 and Leap version 2. This being the discontinued model that was initially introduced by Steelcase in 1999. While this is an amazing chair, I want to point out all the differences in terms of the functionality and why there is a price difference between the version 2 and the version 1 that originally came out with. There are some improvements, but there are also some other elements of shrinkflation that you're going to probably notice, similar to the other issues that you're seeing out there where things are being reduced in terms of quality, but the prices are going higher. Without further ado, we're going to go down through the side-by-side comparisons of the version 1 and the version 2, what's become better, what's become worse. First thing that's going to be super obvious for someone to pick up on whether you're being sold a Leap version 1 or a version 2 is the arm pads. You look at these, there's going to be a very stark difference. Here there's going to be a much more rectangular shape on the edges and then only slight curvature on the edges in the middle part of the arm pads. Here, it's much more rounded on all the edges and much more bulging. Now, when it comes to feel, you'll notice that this is a much stiffer construction. That's because it's a two-layer construction. There's a hard, thin layer of vinyl on the outside, and you're gonna notice if I rip this open, there's gonna be a foam under it. This two-layer construction makes it much more stiff. So it is gonna be much more durable, but in terms of comfort, if you have sensitive elbows, that might be a different situation. Whereas the arm pads for the Leap, they used to have a two-layer construction, but then they switched to one layer, and it's just a solid foam piece, one piece molded in. And when you first buy them, they're a little bit harder, but they do get softer with time and use. After they did make the improvement around 2003, that improvement alleviated this issue completely, where they had the bubbling of the arm pads. Next, we're going to still focus on the arms, but we're going to move down from the arm pads all the way to the arms. So the arms here on the Leap V2, you're going to notice it's a telescoping arm and is controlled by a button on the side. It's pretty good. And when we look at the construction of it, we're going to notice that the shaft here is plastic, and so is the sheath that it goes into, which is decent for a telescoping function, up and down. And then you try to go down to look at the play, there is some kind of play. And if you zoom in from the top here, you'll notice that you can see the play in terms of the arm. Now, if you look at the construction of the Leap V1, you're going to notice it's steel arm and a plastic sheath, and still has a side activation for the height of the telescoping arm. Much heavier to go up and down, so it's going to take a little bit more force. But in the long run, this thing's going to be a tank in terms of durability. It can't be really broken. There's no play or very little play compared to the V2, but it's going to be much more durable in terms of like shipping or even utilizing it in-house, or if it's moving. This thing's going to last much longer. The final thing which we're going to address in terms of the arms is the maneuverability and the adjustability of the arm. If we look at the arm pad of the Steelcase Leap version 2, and a lot of the Steelcase chairs now all have this function, is the 4D function. So they slide vertically, and they also go inwards, horizontally, pivot, inwards and outwards. So you basically have a very wide range of possibilities and positionings. If we look at the Leap version 1, you're going to notice that it does pivot inwards and outwards, but they don't slide vertically forward and backward, and they don't really have that aspect of the very wide range. So what they call this is the 3D arms versus the 4D arms. That extra dimension of the sliding arms is the biggest variation. With the Leap version 2, you'll notice that these arm pads, we actually manufacture these arm pads, the newer enhanced version, not the bubbling version that's 2 layers. The other advantage that you have with the Leap version 2, if you were to get it, is that you do have the opportunity to renew these arm pads if something were to happen where a pen were to puncture it, or something were bad to happen and you damaged it in any way, shape, or form in making contact with a desk, or simply you bought a very old Leap version 2 that just needs a little bit of TLC and refurbishing, and you wanted to renew the arm pads yourself. So these are simply installed by 4 screws, and they're available by us and other sellers. The Leap version 1, you don't have that option. It's discontinued, no longer available. So you're going to be stuck with a chair that has older arm pads. If it is scratched, you're going to have to try to find a way to jerry rig it and sand it and clean it, and even then it might not really come out perfect. The best option in terms of getting something closer to new, even if it's used, is the Leap version 2, because of the option of buying arm pads for it from some sellers like us. So the back cushions are drastically different in 2 different ways. The height of the Leap V2, obviously you can see, is taller and allows it to be pretty malleable, which is convenient for adjusting and conforming to your back. You'll notice that here, whereas this one is shorter, which makes it a little bit less malleable, even though it is have the gills in the back as well, like the Leap V2. It's still not as malleable in terms of conformity. One advantage that the V1 may have, in some people's opinion, is with regards to the back cushion is significantly thicker. And what they compensated for is with these backs, tremendous amount of cushion. If you look at this cushion, is much, much thicker. If we look at the side profile from here, you'll see it's really, really thick. And they actually did that same amount of thicknesses. They added a lot to the seat cushion as well. Whereas here, you'll notice it's thinner. And I'll tell you why that actually could be a good thing in some people's opinion. Both of them have a lumbar support that's adjustable. If you were going to adjust the lumbar and the thinner back, you're going to be able to feel it much more in the Leap version 2 versus the Leap version 1 because of the fact that the cushion is thinner. Now, I can still feel it in the version 1, but it's just more pronounced in the version 2. And so I can feel the support much more from the lumbar. Another major difference is the ability to control the seat edge. And this is the feature that they had in the version 1 that they removed in the version 2. There is no seat edge in the version 2, which is crazy. I don't know why. I think it's a really cool feature because it adds an even additional layer to the seat depth. As you'll notice here, you'll notice the seat depth, and right next to it is the seat edge. The way that functions is like this, as follows. Pull it up, push down, let go. That's where it's positioned. If I want to release it, push up. This is similar to the Mira 1's Flex Front feature, so that it controls or adds an ability to change the seat depth. The last feature of the V1 that's different than the V2 is here at first impression, you look at it, both bases may look like they're plastic. There's a plastic base on the 5-star base for the Leap version 2 and a plastic 5-star base for the version 1. That's the first impression. However, if I were to flip this over, you're going to notice that the version 1 has a steel base that's only encased with the plastic, and that's probably to prevent it from being scratched. So that makes the Leap version 1 significantly heavier. You have 2 different large components that are really heavy compared to the version 2. You have the steel arms and the steel base, That makes it much, much heavier compared to the version 2, which is lighter. We're going to go through all of the things that are the same. The quickest things I'm going to talk about is, yes, you have telescoping arms on both. You have the back firmness that can be adjusted on both. You have the seat height, which is standard on most chairs. You have the upper back force, and the multiple levels of backstops on both. You only have the seat depth being the same on both. And they do have the arching frame support on the back. They look slightly different though. And so now that we've made the comparison and the contrast and we understand why the Leap version 2 is slightly better, there is a lot of functions that are a little bit better in terms of the back being more comfortable and malleable and taller. And then also the arms having the 4D as opposed to the 3D. Still, this might have a little bit of an advantage in terms of durability. Nonetheless, we would price this at around $400 some. The version 1 is going to be very similar in price from a professional refurbished store. However, you're going to get better functionality with this, and you're going to have more availability for replacement parts. Whereas this one, there are no really much significant amount of replacement parts for the version 1. And so you're buying a model that's going to maybe be more durable, but is not going to have the replacement parts if this situation occurs where you have something that needs to be changed, like arm pads, for example, or back cushions. With that being said, you need to be really careful when someone comes, like a third party, whether it be like online seller or even an in-person seller, someone selling it to you in the garage or used, that you are very clear on what you're pricing the chairs at because of what the models they are. So we always insist we get pictures when someone says they're selling us Leap version 2s instead of Leap version 1s. They are confused even sometimes by the seller. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not, but it's really important that you know what you're buying and what to look for so that you don't get scammed and so that potentially someone else doesn't make the mistake of selling you something unintentionally.